right, John Boyle, why don't you start us up?
Just want to found the mute button. Yeah, Russ, what what have you seen out of this offense in the second half that needs to get better? I mean, Pete mentioned just converting on third down, but how do you kind of maintain the momentum from how good you've been in the first half into the second half?
I just think we have to execute. It's not anything we have to go fishing for. I think that we obviously have the ability to do that. We've done that throughout the game, earlier in the game, and everything else. And I think we just have to execute. And I think the opportunities too. The more opportunities, the better. But I think just catching that rhythm and staying out of third and long situations. The times we haven't. Sometimes it's been a little bit longer distances. And I'm thinking about in the third quarter of last game. We had third and 17 or something like that. So those are always tricky to get, but just stay in the course. We know what we're going to do and how we can do it and how what our mindset is and what we're capable of.
Jackie?
Hey, Russ. Looking at the 49ers, their secondary is a little banged up, but what do you see from their defensive front?
Well, the defensive front's one of the best in the league. They fire around. They're all over the place. Obviously, they got a lot of tremendous players. Obviously both Armstead, Jones, all the guys that got come in and out of the game. So they're really, really talented. They got guys come off the bench from Ford and other guys too. So, I think the biggest thing is their defensive line and what they do. Obviously, Warner is one of the best guys in the league, just in defense in general. That really great safeties. They're a little banged up, on the outside, but they have a really good scheme. They do a really good job of what they're trying to get after and how they do it, and they coach extremely well. So we're gonna have to bring our A game.
Thank you.
Corbin?
Hey, Russ, it seemed like last week that you were able to connect on some throws in the middle that were in tighter windows that maybe you turned down the previous game or two. What goes into your thought process as a quarterback with those type of throws?
Just you got to know, number one, the situation and all that, when you're trying to rip it in there and when not. And sometimes you don't need to, fire it in there unnecessarily if you have maybe somebody else open. Out of my peripheral, sometimes I see maybe somebody else open and I can check it down to or whatever. But I'm always trying to find our guys. There's so many great playmakers. And that's the great thing that we have.
Michael Sean?
Hey, Russ, I know winning is all you want to do. That's your priority and everything. But when it doesn't happen, how do you process not winning, like mentally, when that doesn't happen for you?
Well, I think that every opportunity, obviously there's a win statistically, but I think every opportunity is a lesson to learn something. I think that you're always gaining knowledge and you're always understanding more, and and not everything's a failure. I think everything is an opportunity to grow. Individually, collectively as a team, and just, continue to learn the game. I love adversity. I love adversity. I know our football team does too, and we can handle it. And we're looking forward to answering the call and trying to play our best football.
Thanks.
Jen?
What do you make of when points are scored during the game? Like first half, second half, third quarter. I know that at the end you just want more than the other team, but is there something about momentum, rhythm, any of that about when points are scored?
What was your first part of your question, Jen? I lost you for a second. You said I heard the whole question except for the very first part. What do you
make of when points are scored in the game?
I don't overthink it. You can't overthink it. I think that every possession you want to be able to score, and that's just you want to be able to score touchdowns. I think we've been doing a really good job of that, especially in the red zone and stuff like that. I think our biggest thing has been just miscues, penalties here and there, little things like that. I think about the drive that we had in the first half. We were rolling, we had the screen, and we had a little penalty that backed us up. In the Tennessee game, we had a couple penalties there, late in the game, and so we just got to stay on schedule. And then, and when we have an opportunity to make our plays, you got to make them, and so I think, but I do believe that, I do like, obviously I do like how we've been scoring early and often, and I think that now is just a little bit more tuned into, how do we switch it into the opportunities that we do get? How do we make those so spot on, that we're unstoppable, and I think that's what we're searching for. I think that we have an opportunity to be that way, and we can, and so we just got to stay hungry, stay focused, have a great week of practice, and be zoned in throughout the whole practice, and obviously transfer that into the game.
Bob?
Yeah, Russell, you mentioned that you love adversity and all that. You guys have sort of had a few slow starts through the years and come back from them, like 2018 in particular. What's sort of the real key to doing that? Kind of keeping everybody, I guess, in the fold when that happens.
I think you got to stay the course. So many times people panic and they get, worried and frustrated and this and that. And I think, I think the best thing to do is stay the course and be honest and figure out how we can get better, this and that, and then keep going for it. This league is challenging. Every game is challenging. We play arguably the best division of football. Every week is tough, and we look forward to the challenges of it all. I think the language is everything too. How we pick each other up, how we communicate with one another, how we continue to stay focused on the task at hand. We've been playing some really, really good football, and then there's some things that we can get better at. That's the truth. It's not anything more complicated than that. But now it's taking those things that we can get better at, and really week to week just continue to just improve on those things, and letting all the good stuff that's happening. There's a lot of good stuff. There's a whole bunch of good stuff that I think when teams lose or people lose or whatever it may be, you don't want to get distracted on that stuff in the sense of all the good things that you're doing. You want to be able to stay focused on that and keep doing that really well, but at the same time also be able to balance your mind and your emotions to be able to stay the course and stay focused on the task at hand of how we can improve. And so I think that beautiful balance is what's really key.
Brady?
Hello, sir. We heard a lot about the increased emphasis on more underneath throws this season. How do you feel like that part of your offense has functioned so far?
I think we've been super efficient with the ball. I think that we've made a lot of good things. Obviously, we hit some deep ones too here and there. So I think we're doing a really good job of it. I think in the process of it all, we're just playing the game. I think I don't try to overthink it. You just try to take what you see and continue to try to deliver the ball to our guys. We've got so many playmakers. So I think we're doing a good job of it.
You said you like adversity. Why is that?
That's all I've ever known.
I think he called on me. I'll go.
Yeah, I think he called you, Greg. Yep.
Thank you, sir. Russ, you've never lost 3 in a row. I'm sure you know that. What do you attribute that to?
Not thinking about losing 3 in a row. I just focus on the winning part of it, focus on the process, focus on getting better, focus on what I can do and how I can lead and communicate, and just keeping my energy high, keeping my focus high, continue to work hard, get here early, leave late, like always. Just stay focused on the simple things. The simple things win. And just continue to try to do those things really well. You got to keep your mind right. You got to keep your language right. And I think and I always tell you guys, I got to remain neutral. It's supposed to be a challenge, and I always, like I said, I know every year there's always going to be challenges that you're going to face, and this is what it is.
And Gerald Everett's positive COVID test, was that a reminder of how tricky this can be and how you still have to stay on it? How did the team take that after not having one for 2 years?
We haven't had one, I think for 2 years or something like that, almost a year and a half and some change. It's devastating in the sense that you never know what could happen. And this thing has been so challenging for our families, for other people's families, for so many people around the country, around the world, even our own state. It's been a lot of loss, a lot of pain, and so we all have to continue to try to do our part. As much as we can. Things happen, unfortunately, and to have a guy like Gerald who's been working his butt off to just continue to be great and continue to be the best version of himself and everything else. And I know he's taking it hard, but also at the same time, I'm glad he's okay too. Because it is health and it is life and it is real. And but he's seems like he's doing well and everything else. So we're grateful that nobody else has it, and we're just trying to bunker down, I guess you could say, in a way, and just be really safe and be really smart. And it's tricky. It's this thing's in the air. It's you don't really know. You know what I mean. So it's one of those things you got to be really careful, and we all have to be careful. It's obviously as players, but also as fans and friends and family members and everything else. And we can do this together. We all have to do it together. We all have to help each other and remind each other, and I think that's really important.
John?
Yeah, a non-football one. I'm just curious how'd writing a children's book come together? What went into that decision for you guys? And what was that one?
Ever since I met C, we've been talking about that for a while, about being able to write a children's book and something that we've always been passionate about. And, we both share the sentiments of Why Not You. Obviously, our foundation is called the Why Not You Foundation. And when we were talking about it, what would we name our children's book, if we had one? And we were both like, why not you? At the same time, it was kind of funny. So, I think that we want to be able to inspire young kids all around the world, all around the country. And I think that this children's book will paint a picture for them of who they can be and what they can be and what they can do and why not you. And I think a lot of it is that this beautiful imagination that I think, both of our parents, my mom and my dad and Sierra's mom and dad gave us. And hopefully we can pass that to our kids, but also the next generation of kids and their kids and y'all's kids and everybody else's. And so I think that, what's really important about, our book is that it can be anybody that can dream big, and it can be anybody that can do anything special. And I think that we really wanted to demonstrate diversity and just community, and just love and just and just dreaming. We dream really big, and sometimes I think people shy away from dreaming big, and I think that we as parents, we want to be able to instill that why not you attitude. And so that's what we've been able to do for our foundation, our Why Not You Foundation, over the years. And obviously we have our Why Not You Academy too as well. And so it's been a blessing. It's so cool. Like I was on C showed me on Instagram the other day, just our kids, we actually hopped on a Zoom call, and she was showing me the kids at Why Not You Academy, and just I hopped on the Zoom call for 15 minutes, and she talked to the kids for about an hour and a half. But just it's such a blessing to be able to think about making a difference in some young kid's life, and just to be able to impact a kid and inspire a kid and give them a chance and give her a chance to believe in themselves, where sometimes they may not hear it, or may not feel it or experience it. I hope that that's an opportunity that we can continue to do and continue to love that way. And so it's been really cool just to write this book, and it's some really cool pictures. It's been an amazing journey. It's been such a cool journey. So we're grateful for doing it.
All right, last question, Adam.
You said Adam, yeah, I think. There you go.
Russ, another non-football one, but we know you're a big baseball guy too. Have you caught on with Mariners fever here a little bit?
I know. There's this tight race. It's been amazing to watch. I watched the whole game last night. It was an amazing game. Kelnick hitting that ball last night. That was a huge hit. It was a great game. And so it's cool seeing the Seattle fans and just the energy in Seattle. Obviously, got our Sounders too that are doing well. That's been cool to watch and be a part of. And so it's just it's a special city. Seattle, and to see sports coming alive. Obviously the Kraken are playing here soon, and their first game, and they've been practicing and doing preseason or whatever. But it's just it's cool. There's Seattle sports, and now we just need to get the Sonics back, I think. But it's been really cool. Obviously, see what the Mariners have been doing. Just that kind of believe attitude that you see, you experience and you watch. It's throughout the whole team. So that's cool to watch for sure.
Thank you, Russ.
Okay, thank you guys. Go Hawks.